this year, the theater department at Carroll High School in Fort Wayne, Indiana, was going to put on a production of a play titled Marian, or The True Tale of Robin Hood, a retelling of the classic Robin Hood story, but with the twist that Robin Hood doesn't really exist. He's a fabricated identity used by Maid Marian. That's not really a spoiler as much as it's just the basic premise of the play. However, while still in auditions for the play, the school principal canceled the production, a move that was supported by the superintendent. What was the rationale? Well, vague notions of protecting the children, of course. You see, not only does this play feature a cross-dressing Maid Marian, there are also characters that are gay, and a character who identifies as non-binary. With Indiana recently passing their own versions of the so-called Don't Say Gay legislations, those inclined towards homophobia and bigotry have become empowered to suppress all sorts of LGBTQ+ representation, especially in the schools. But in true Robin Hood, or I suppose Maid Marian fashion, the students decided to take matters into their own hands. They launched a GoFundMe campaign to produce the play themselves, independent of the school system that had let them down. With a goal of $50,000, the students were able to raise over $83,000 and to put on a production that filled the 2,700-seat rented theater. The funds raised from their ticket sales were used to create an LGBTQ+ support fund for high schoolers around the country. Links to their page and the story from their local paper will be posted in the episode description. Since their production last month, the story has been picked up by major national news outlets, and I'm afraid that I wasn't able to arrange an interview with any of these rebel thespians. However, I did succeed in getting in touch with Szymkowicz, the author of the play. I also got in touch with Ted Lewis, a man I met over 20 years ago when we both performed with a Renaissance Fair troupe called, appropriately enough, the Thieves Guild. During the intervening years, Ted has been the drama teacher at my old high school in Gainesville, Florida, and his students also recently put on a production of Marian, or The True Tale of Robin Hood. Their production also could not be done in their high school auditorium. But in their case, it's because they had to deal with an actual risk to the well-being of the students. Now string your bow, purchase your theater ticket, and raise your pride flag as we enter the Greenwood with playwright Szymkowicz and drama teacher Ted Lewis.
Hey, how's it going?
Hello. Oh, it's going well. How are you?
All right.
Yeah, thanks for joining me here. So you are Szymkowicz, am I saying that right?
Szymkowicz.
Szymkowicz. And you are the author of the play Marian, or The True Tale of Robin Hood, as well as many other works.
Yes, I am. I did that.
About how long ago did you write that play?
Oh, geez. I don't know. I kind of write a lot, so let's see. We did it in New York in 2017. So I probably wrote it like sometime in 2016, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I became aware of it in 2021. My former high school did a production of it during COVID.
Oh, really? Oh, cool.
Yeah, and because of the COVID restrictions they were under, they weren't able to use their playhouse. They were able to rent a castle that somebody had built on an island off the coast of Florida.
Oh my God.
They were able to kind of rent that for a day and film all of the interior castle scenes there, and kind of were kind of quarantining together while they did that, and then filmed the rest of it in this kind of outdoor park space that they were able to find. And then put it up online for people.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I had no idea about that. What's the name of the school?
Buchholz High School in Gainesville, Florida. Yeah, so I just had an interview with the producer of the play, the drama teacher for that high school, to kind of talk about what that experience was, the trying circumstance that they had to deal with, which was them at that time, COVID. And this was shortly before, so they're in Florida, but this was before Ron DeSantis's Don't Say Gay bill. A little bit about what the situation was like for them, if they experienced any pushback, which I'm happy to say they did not from the community, not from the actors, not from the parents. And they feel very well supported by their administration. They still feel well supported from their administration currently, to the point that they seem pretty confident they could still do this production now, even though it's just a couple years later. But there's already been this sea change that we've seen, which inspired the story about the students in Fort Wayne, which it prompted me to reach out to you.
Right. Great.
So I guess I'm really kind of wanting to know a little bit about what prompted you to write the play, kind of what was your inspiration, especially to take it in that direction that you did.
Yeah, I mean, I've been writing plays for a very long time, but growing up, I really loved Robin Hood, and both the Disney version and the what was the several different versions. There's the one with oh God, what was that called? Basically, he has like long dark hair, and like Hearn was like an important part of it.
Yeah, ITV's UK's Robin of Sherwood.
Yes, thank you. And so my dad like co-owned a video store, and I watched that like over and over again. And then like when I was in high school, the I'm gonna carve your heart out with a spoon version came out, which I really loved too. But like as a kid, I remember like going around with a bow and arrow, and like I had this like green vest, and like really into like Robin Hood. And so it's always like, as a playwright, like it always been like in the back of my head, like, oh, I wish I could figure out like a version of that kind of thing. And Flux Theater, who I've worked with a bunch in New York, commissioned a bunch of us at one point, and basically they asked us for like, oh, well, what are some plays that you would want to write? And I gave them 3 or 4 ideas, and the one that they were excited about was the Robin Hood one. And yeah, and I was basically like, I don't think anyone's done this yet, so I better do it quickly before someone else has the exact same idea. And it was just, the premises, of course, that Robin Hood has always been Maid Marian in disguise,
right?
Which I thought, like with all the Shakespeare kind of stuff where there's disguises and people just believe it. And I'll make it kind of a comedy in that realm where it's just everyone's in disguise and everyone believes the ridiculous disguises kind of thing. So I was excited to do that, and I wrote it for them, and we did a reading, and then probably about a year or so later, we put the play up in New York, and yeah, now it's been done, I don't know, 50 something times. I forget. They say, 60 something times, 64, 65, something like that.
Yeah, over 60 times, and
almost half our high school version of it, which basically takes, I don't know if you've read it, but the high school version doesn't have most of the sex jokes in it, basically.
Okay, yeah, I'm only familiar with the high school version.
Yeah, so it's that with some added sex jokes.
But I assume that the school that had the parent complaints, they were still doing the high school version, so they weren't even complaining about the sex jokes. They were
doing the high school version.
Complaining about, I guess, the fact that there is representation present. I read
gay people existing.
Yeah, exactly. I read the journal articles about it. I haven't contacted the school or tried to beat down their door to demand more. That's not my job. Did you experience any sort of pushback when you were writing the play? Did anybody look at a draft and be like, oh, I don't know about all this queer content here?
No, we're doing it in New York. So it got like a lot of praise, basically. Like everyone, there was none of that. I mean, we're New York theater. That's not a thing. And then I started getting like an inkling of it when I Zoomed with one high school, who hadn't done it yet, but were about, they knew they were going to do it. And like all the kids kept asking me like, what are the criticisms you received about this play? And I'm like, none, I haven't gotten any. What are you, what are you talking about? And they kept asking that question. I was like, oh, right. Okay. They're super uncomfortable with this and they're worried about how their community is going to respond to this.
Uh-huh.
And, I mean, it was never intended to be a play that high schools did, but like high school teachers reached out to me and asked me like, hey, if we cut certain parts of this, like I could totally do it in my high school and we would love to do it.
And by certain parts, you really just mean the sex jokes.
Yeah. Just there's some sex and some sex jokes. And so like we just took those out and then like everything else is exactly the same. It's just, now it's not a concubine, now it's a servant. Like,
I see.
Yeah. The things that he shouts out during sex are not in, like, that doesn't even happen. We just cut those jokes. So, yeah. And so now, yeah, it's been, I don't know, more than 25 schools have licensed it. And, and it seems like more are doing it. So, yeah.
Good. Yeah, no, I'm really glad to hear that. And I hope that it continues. And I know that it was important for those kids in Fort Wayne. I know it was important for the kids at my previous high school that did it a couple of years ago.
That's great
to be able to see, these kind of plays, to see themselves be represented. It's not going to shock anybody to hear that there is a tradition of people who are genderqueer existing, especially in the theater realm.
Yeah.
And when I was in high school, I can't imagine that my school doing this play. No. I think there'd be people who would have wanted to do it, but I think everybody just would have been afraid.
I was in high school in the 90s, so Same. We did. Yeah, there was no one out of the closet, and no one was talking about genderqueer wasn't a thing that we all knew about.
Right.
So I mean, I'm super impressed with these kids in lots of ways.
Was there anything in particular that was inspiring you to include not just that fun twist of the Marian is really Robin Hood. The Robin Hood really doesn't even exist on his own. He's just a guise that she uses, but something that really inspired wanting to include gay characters, wanting to include a non-binary character.
I don't know what the cause of that exactly was. I've written about gender for a long time in different ways. And I feel like this was like the conversation about gender was evolving and I was trying to evolve with it, but like in a very like gentle kind of way that is introducing, I think, some people to even it was back then anyway, introducing some people to even the idea of a non-binary person. The other thing is just most theater companies are mostly women, and I wanted to do a Robin Hood, but I also really wanted to do a Robin Hood that would actually be done. And so I always try to write as many female characters as I can, so that these amazing actors have something to do.
Yeah.
And so like that was kind of what was behind, like, okay, let's see let as many of the guards be female as possible. Let as many of the merry men be whatever gender. They don't have to be men to be merry men. Yeah, so I think that's kind of what I was thinking initially, and then we got a few trans people to be involved in the production, which was really great, and a non-binary person playing much, and it was super successful and super fun. And I was like, I don't know, maybe somebody will do this play, and so I'm super excited that like it's not my most produced play, but at the moment it's my second most produced play.
Oh, what is your most produced?
This play called Kodachrome, which is kind of an our town play. Okay. Again, like mostly being more productions at high schools than at little theaters.
Have you noticed any uptick in interest based on the kind of recent controversy with the play?
Yeah, there was like a day in which I sold a bunch of copies, or like a couple days in which I sold a bunch of copies of it. Because I get an email every day telling me like how many copies were sold, and it's not like a lot, but like like 20 or something.
Sure.
So
yeah, it's like podcast downloads for me.
feel like right. So like it's kind of similar to, I think what's happening is that anyone who was thinking about doing it is going to second guess, because if there was issues at this school, there will be issues also at their school, maybe if their school is like that. And I think there's other people who are like, I'm so angry, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this play as a sign of resistance. So in my mind, it probably evens out. Maybe I'll get a uptick in the number of productions that happen. I don't know.
I guess we'll just see. It's a time will tell. But really, it is one of those stories in relation to what happened with the school in Fort Wayne is how it's so heartbreaking and inspirational at the same time. Heartbreaking that somebody would complain, heartbreaking that the administration didn't back the students, that they didn't stand up to the complaints, that schools are so afraid right now. And that's kind of one of these overall stories that you're seeing across the nation, all over the place right now, of teachers getting fired, principals getting fired based on complaints from parents. And, so that the administration felt that they had to cave, perhaps to preserve their jobs, is very heartbreaking. The fact that these kids were able to still go on, independently raise the money to put on a production and then do a sold out run of their show, that part is very inspirational. So it's definitely sort of a mixed bag, good and bad sort of story.
It's also definitely a timing thing, because I know that same school the year before had done a play by Don Zelitis in which there's a gay character. I think he said like a gay guinea pig. I don't know, but a gay character definitely. And so it really is just like, oh, the timing of this, like that happened, nothing happened, and then just like, there's like a few very loud people now making life very difficult for gay people and for trans people, and it's pretty awful. Yeah, I mean,
it's very unfortunate that they have been given as much voice and as much power to cause the problems that they have. I think it is always worth remembering that they really are just a vocal minority, when it comes to actual human beings living their lives. There isn't that same kind of hate that is really representative of the community at large, and that there was perhaps one or two parents that complained, where there were hundreds and hundreds that have seen the productions and plays and had no complaints and have enjoyed them. Right. It is reaching more people and being able to help showcase inclusivity. And so the overall impact is still a positive one. It's just unfortunate that some people are being able to have their voices amplified right now.
Yeah, and it is super exciting that these kids, I mean, they had a huge outdoor theater and it was completely packed. And so the number of people that got to see this it's really a very tame play.
It is.
The play. It's not. There's. It is like, resistance, but it's like, but it's really a silly comedy,
Yeah.
It's like, we must persist, we must go on, we must fight, but also it's just it's a lot of jokes, mostly.
So a little bit on that idea of resistance and the concept of Robin Hood, I did want to ask you, as the playwright in particular, is there anything that you think really, any of the themes regarding Robin Hood and how we relate to that character, that lend itself to this form of storytelling that it embraces inclusivity, I guess is really what I'm saying.
Oh.
How do you see Robin Hood as a good vector for embracing inclusivity?
Right. Well, I mean, I definitely think that Robin Hood has always been a champion for the poor. And I kind of took that and ran with it a little bit and tried to be like, champion for everybody. Let's bring everybody in, and everybody who wants to be, let's come be a merry man, and we'll call you whatever you want to be called. So, and this was 2017, and so Trump had just won pretty recently. So it felt like joyous and like a act of rebellion and an act of like, we're still here and we're going to be who we are and not care, not not be affected or fight back when attacked, kind of thing. In a in a non with words, not with
Right.
but it's like, oh, it did feel like a little bit of resisting, of like a celebration of differences and a group of people who can all get along together.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of the time, even very well-meaning, very liberally minded people, when I've seen them, hit a little bit of a wall when it comes to acceptance, especially of people who are non-binary or who are trans, who are transitioning, who are taking on new identities, is that idea of, oh, but this was your identity, this was your name, and how I'm putting a lot of importance on the names that they were given to them upon birth. And one of the kind of realizations I had a few years ago was that I grew up in a culture that very much embraced the idea of people being able to select their own names, sometimes through people taking stage names and really embracing, but also sometimes through the hippie culture, and also a lot through bikers. I knew a lot of people who just had weird names, and that was who I knew them as, Mark the Beast, Deadfly, Spam, just like that was just their names. And they were, of course, names that they selected for themselves. And it was very normalized in my upbringing. And I think one of the things that the Robin Hood stories do is they also kind of get at that idea of, you can have a new identity. You can go off into the woods and take a new identity. You can...
that's really cool. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah. And I think, and your play even really leans into that with the whole Marian having the alter ego of Robin Hood.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. I also feel like it's something about brain plasticity too. I feel like like the whole like non-binary thing, I think is really hard for people over a certain age to quite understand, or even just like figuring out how to say they and them. Like it's just trickier. And I feel like I'm like right on the, like, I'm 45 and it's hard, but like I think I mostly succeed. But like I feel like people who are like 5 to 10 years older, like it's a lot harder for them.
Yeah. The teacher at that high school in Florida, who I was speaking to, he's very open, totally supporting these kids. He's in his 60s though, and he tells his kids that he loves them, he sees them, he wants them to be who they are, but he is going to have a problem with the they them. Like it just it doesn't click well for him.
Yeah, I mean it's just really a new concept, and going your whole life believing in a binary and having your brain like categorize things. I don't know. I think it's really hard. I think it's really hard to, especially for older people, just because like it just feels like something your brain doesn't want to do, I think.
Yeah. Upsetting paradigms can be rough. But I think Robin Hood is a good story for exploring the idea of upsetting paradigms.
Totally.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to speak with me. Do you have any kind of last thoughts you want to share about anything you hope might be the impact of your work?
I mean, it's really just to play for people to have a good time, and it does feel like for me, it's like a celebration of joy and really having fun. And that's what I was trying to do.
All right. There's nothing wrong with that.
I mean, also capitalism is bad, but
down with capitalism, but let's have a good time while we're at it. Yeah.
That's just kind of folded in. Right.
Yeah. Resist, tyrants.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much.
Great to talk to you.
Yeah, likewise. This was fun.
Take care.
So this was in the year 2021, so 2 years ago from the time of this recording, when the Buchholz High School players put on a production of Marian, or the True Tale of Robin Hood by Szymkowicz. Um, and so this is a play that's been in the news recently because of various political reasons we'll get into perhaps a little bit later. But you had very particular challenges because it was the year 2021 and a lot of school was being done remotely at the time. And how do you do a theatrical production when school is remote?
Right. So what we did, we got the idea, my students and I was going to do what everybody else did, the Zoom one act things where everybody's just kind of on a panel. And we did one play like that, and it was okay. I mean, it actually was pretty good. It was written by my students, filmed by the students. They did the script writing and all. And it was basically 4 friends who were trapped at home, and one of them ends up dying because she's reckless. So that's what they did it. And then they put it up. We streamed that like a regular ticket admission. And then I took the radio play War of the Worlds, and I rewrote it as War of the Worlds 1963. And then we presented it as though it was a television show in 1963 or newscast, using green screens, black and white, fading, the monochromatic filming and all that. And then we kind of recreated the whole thing using some special effects for the attack on the people and the scientists getting zapped and things like that. So that was our first big film. The other one was a small one. Then we did the big one. And that one went so well. Everybody was like, well, we were going to do Marian, the true story of Robin Hood on stage anyway. So where could we film it? Well, somebody said to me, I can't remember, just somebody mentioned did you know there's a castle in St. Augustine? I said, well, yeah, I suppose we could film it at the Castillo. That'd be sort of cool. And all that. They said, no, there's a castle over near St. Augustine. And I said, what? So I go online, I look it up, and sure enough, there's a replica of an Irish castle at Volano Beach. Didn't even know it. Been there all these years. Like 40 years it's been there. And so I went over and took a look at it.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who didn't know, because I also used to live in that area. And
I've lived here my whole life.
I had no idea.
I know. I remember I used to drive past it once in a while, and I thought it was one of those old industrial leftover buildings, kind of, from, like the early 30s. But then I found out what it actually was. And turned out it was a replica of a castle. It was built by these 2 Vietnam vets who had gotten out, and they had literally built this entire castle stone by stone, rock by rock. And it is a replica of an Irish castle. Throne room, kitchen, dining area, upstairs turrets. I mean, it's beautiful, and it's on really nice grounds as well. So I was like, well, this is a really cool place. And so I arranged to go in, because it's not open to the public. And I arranged to go in there and talk to the guys. He and I hit it off. Both of us were bikers. We got along instantly. So, and he rented us the space, rented us the site for a day for like $800, which is hardly anything. And we went in there and we filmed all the castle sequences, the big melee sequences, and all of that actually in the castle, upstairs on the top of the tower, and then down around the grounds themselves. It was a lot of fun. Well, then we needed to have another location for Sherwood Forest, because yes, there were woods there, but you had to be really careful not to get a palmetto, because that's obviously Florida and not England. So we found a place out by the Progress Center, which is out near Alachua. It's that big UF complex out there. They have a whole section back there of public grounds with trails, no palms, lots of giant oak trees, including one really big, beautiful oak tree that totally became the center of Robin Hood's camp. Well, Marian's camp, technically.
Right.
And so we filmed out there for those sequences, and the sequences where the sheriff's men are looking for them and that kind of thing. And it was just really fun. By working outdoors, everybody was able to take their mask off when they performed. Whenever they got back into the group, the masks were back on again. But we were outdoors, and everybody enjoyed it. It kept the program going. We filmed it, and then we streamed it for basically 8 shows, and made as much money as we would have made on it if it had been a play. It's the same thing with the Worlds. We did really well by streaming it and charging a regular single ticket price for access. And we did that we did like 4. We did our 1X, and we also did that we did like a Hallmark special Christmas show called Snowcase. And, I rode in on the motorcycle, my Santa outfit, things like that. And we filmed, and then we could only bring in like 10 kids at a time in the whole auditorium, kept them spread out. and then we would film the sections, of the show, the performance with it, and then we edited everything together to where we did the complete show. So we didn't violate any COVID rules. Everybody stayed safe. We didn't have a single COVID case, not one. That entire year, we didn't have a single COVID case, and that was in itself was kind of an accomplishment. And Marian, I didn't actually pick Marian. I mean, I wanted to do a sword fighting show, so I talked to a couple of my kids. The student director was in the Thieves Guild, and very talented fight choreographer herself. And she, because she had choreographed Treasure Island for me the year before, she and I were gonna choreograph it, and then we started working on it. And she was so good at it, I just let her go. I let her run with it. So then she wanted to direct Marian. She picked the show out. She liked the fact that it was diverse. She liked the fact that it recognized, different groups. She liked the fact that it was like really LGBTQ friendly. And I looked at it and I said, this is kind of a cool storyline. I like the storyline. It's not classic Robin Hood, but you still had the classic fights. You had the classic archery tournament. You had obviously the fights on the tower. And then you had different types of relationships budding between the merry men and the merry men's, sisters and the peasants who were seeking refuge with Robin and Sherwood Forest. So it delved a little bit into different types of relationships there too. Like there were you had a couple of lesbian couples that were working. You had a couple of couples where people we're not sure, I could go either way kind of thing. And it just had it all there into the script, which it was a huge hit with our audience. Our audience really, really liked it. The kids enjoyed doing it. It made a statement. It was fun, and they got to swing swords at each other. I mean, win-win-win is what it was. It was a really interesting experience, I have to say. This is one of the shows that we did that was completely student-directed. All I did was act as advisor, producer, and I let the director lay everything out, break it up. They set up the travel arrangements. The parents all kicked in, helped us get, Milano Beach is almost 100 miles away and about 98 miles, I think. And then going out to Alachua and filming, and parents were great that year. They just packed their kids up, brought them out, and the parents we had the parent zone where they got to stay in the distance and watch as we did all the filming and everything.
Okay. Yeah.
But it was a great show. And I got to tell you, it appalls me. I read about it being canceled. I don't remember what state it was, but I read about that. And I was just I'm like, this is getting ridiculous. And then I saw the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee got canceled also in another state. And we did that one too. And then I saw, and we did Head Over Heels, the Go-Go's musical, which basically is you have one same-sex couple, you have one non-binary couple, and you have one traditional couple. And we did that. Also a huge hit with our audience as well. And that was right before he signed off on it. Well, he signed off on it before it took effect in July. I didn't even think about it because I'm like, this is plays. People are playing roles. Who's going to say anything about it?
By signed off, or you're talking?
I'm good.
By signed off, or you're talking about the Ron DeSantis, infamous "Don't Say Gay" bill? Is that what you mean by he signed off?
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, because that's when it all started, and then people started getting worried about this and that. And I mean, my administration is great. They literally said, "Look, we're your first line of defense. You do a great job. You just keep doing what you're doing." So that's what I'm doing. I'm still doing what I was doing. Good. When they did the book thing, I got all my books and films. I also teach a film class. I got all that stuff put in and sent it in for approval. And then they told me 24 hours later, we don't need to look at it because this is all linked into extracurricular, and apparently theater classes right now were not being covered by it. Well, then this thing happened in Jacksonville at Douglas Anderson, where one person complained and it forced the shutdown of their play Indecent because it had a same-sex couple in it. And I'm just like, this is crazy. I mean, it's absolutely, and it's not even consistent through the state because the language of the law is so broad. It depends on what part of the state you're in, how they interpret it. I mean, here in my home county, we're still okay, I think. Well, I don't think I'm going to need to worry too much about any as it stands right now. But
I've been worried.
Next door,
having friends and family there. I
know. Well, yeah. I mean, and you also, it's like my friends, family, my students. The biggest thing is my students. I'm a theater teacher. I have a lot of students who fall into those categories, and they're great kids. And it really appalls me to have to see them worrying about things like this instead of just being able to be kids.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that I just feel like, our leadership is great dispersal and old people lives, and particularly young people. My hope is only that I can continue until I retire. I can continue doing what I do. I've never strayed from my PG-13 rating for our shows because I know that's what works with our audience. But Marian was a PG rated show, okay, and Counting Spelling Bee was a PG rated show, and Indecent is borderline R rated. That one is pretty heavy duty. But I just look at the stuff that they're stepping on, and I don't get it. Some counties have just said we're just going to keep going, like Dade County, a large part of Dade County. They're just continuing to do what they do. But then there's other sections of Dade County that are going the opposite direction. So it's just a lot of variation because they left it that, he did that on purpose. They did that on purpose. They left it deliberately, abstract is what they did.
Yeah. So it's got that room for people to complain and take action.
Right. Right.
Yeah. I'm really glad to hear, because I've been wondering, what things were like for your students. I've been hoping that things haven't gotten worse, because it's been just 2 years since you put on this play where you were able to very openly do a play that has so many gay characters and non-binary characters and addresses ideas of gender identity and sexuality, but in a very PG way. It's not at all a sexual play. There's like some like romance, but in a very kind of,
it's romance.
Hands holding kind of romance. Stories of romance are common with Robin Hood. That's par for the course.
Exactly.
There's nothing explicit in it. I did watch your production of it. I bought one of the online tickets and I watched it when it came out. Yeah, it was a very wholesome tale. And so it is very disheartening that it's now become controversial. And I've been hoping that this controversy and that this Don't Say Gay bill hasn't affected you and your students. I'm glad to hear that at least for now it hasn't, that all of your students, all of your parents, and the administration are still behind you. That's really heartening to hear, and I hope that continues to be the case.
Yeah. Well, even my Mormon contingent is still in support of what we're doing. And I will tell you, that surprises me a little, but I don't have quite as many Mormon students as I used to. I used to have quite a few. I have fewer now, but their families are a little more on the conservative side of things. But the thing about it is I listen to them just like I listen to everyone else. I listen to my costumer who politically and religiously is 100% opposite of me, like totally opposite of me. But I'll listen to her because she gives me another perspective. So that's why I try to maintain that balance, within the productions and within the pieces that we do in competition and such. I feel like they should still let teachers do that. I don't know what it's like up where you are, but I can tell you that teachers are dropping by the droves here.
Oh,
it's really hard we literally have 2 days a week that we are told that we're not allowed to be off at all because there's no subs available because there's so many vacancies in the county.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just today interviewed a teacher, looking to get into museum work instead of teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would like to continue teaching at least for another couple of years, and then I'll happily retire at that point. But if it doesn't change too much, and I can keep on doing what I do. We're not, the way they've set it up here, they at least give us a certain amount of flexibility. Like they tell you, well, a teacher can't be held accountable if they choose not to use a proper pronoun according to the student. The parents can't get on their case about it. They can't complain about it because the law says, too bad, they're allowed to do it. But it doesn't say that we can't. It just says that if a teacher chooses to use improper pronouns, they're allowed to. See, me, I'm not going to lie, because I'm also certified in English, I have to go with the names. I have a hard time with they when it's singular. I'm not going to lie. And I tell my students, I say, look, guys, I respect you, and I will use whatever name that you want, and I'll respect your standing. I said, but English-wise, I'm going to slip up every now and again. Sorry, I'll use the wrong pronoun. But they get that. They all understand that. And that's the thing. These are brilliant, intelligent, talented young people. And again, not to even speak of all the talented older, younger, 20-somethings and 30-somethings, here in the state that are all being affected by this. And again, it really depends a lot on what section of the state you're in, at least right now. So I don't know. I hope things don't get worse, but yeah, my optimism is definitely being, hard. It's hard to stay optimistic right now. I'm trying.
There's something, I don't know, interesting, wholesome almost, in how when your class did this production, all of the challenges that you had to deal with were related to keeping everybody COVID safe and dealing with those restrictions and those kind of safety issues, the safety issues of teaching people to safely sword fight, figuring out where to do your filming, those kind of logistical issues, that those were the problems that you had to deal with and overcome. And they weren't the problems that related to homophobia and people being anti-transgender and being closed-minded. It is a shame that you had, adversity that you needed to overcome, but that was it's almost feels strange to say, thank goodness it was only COVID. Thank goodness those were the problems.
Yeah, that's sad, but you're right. I agree with that. So, I consider myself very lucky, where I am, the community that I live in, the support that the programs have here in the community. Not everybody's that fortunate, but I hope it continues to be that way.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
A lot of people like me have to be careful because, we don't want to be forced into retirement early by some parent who wants to make a name for themselves or something, which, is sometimes the case. Not always the case, but sometimes the case.
Yeah, I hope that doesn't happen. I hope that the administration continues to do the right thing by you and your students. And one of my favorite just kind of things about life over the past several decades is, I know that community that you're in. I was in that theater community. I was a theater kid in that same school, in that same town. But that was in the 90s. And there were so many LGBT people that I knew, but it was always on that, like, ooh, do I dare come out to people? It was much more on the periphery of society. There just wasn't that just open acceptance yet. I don't especially think of the people that I was doing plays with as closed-minded for that time, but I couldn't imagine doing a play like the Marian or True Tale of Robin Hood play where characters were openly gay in it. And so in that same community, just seeing that sea change over time with the students in particular, just being able to be more comfortable expressing themselves, being able to present these types of characters, having more diversity on the stage and in the characters being presented is one of the things that has given me so much joy. And I hope that it manages to continue unabated, really.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. I hope so too. I'd hate to see that artistic energy start fading. This generation, at least with the high school, the kids I work with for the most part, this is one of the best open-minded generations I think I have ever encountered. Most of these kids are also very open and also very accepting of what's going on around them. And people, they don't make fun of each other. They support each other.
Yeah.
It does that. And I can't honestly, there's a contingent at our school that likes to make fun of our kids because they think they're the oddballs. And yes, they do fit the stereotype of the people who normally pick on arts people, unfortunately. But in our administration does their very best to make sure that this doesn't turn into things like, bullying or threats or anything like that. We've got a strong administration. They do a really good job, I think, of protecting all the students, not just some of the students. And almost our entire faculty, pretty much our entire faculty is that way. I hate to say it, but I'm really happy that years ago, when I first applied to be a theater teacher, I'm kind of glad that GHS turned me down, because if they hadn't turned me down, I wouldn't have ended up at Buchholz. And I have been inordinately happy at Buchholz for the past 22 years. I really have. But
all right, it's really good catching up with you, Ted. Thank you so much, Ted. This has been great.
All right, well, thanks, Adam. It's good to catch up a little bit with you.
It really is.
All right, man. Catch you later.
Yep. Good luck with everything.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. My thanks again to Adam Szymkowicz and Ted Lewis for joining me in the Greenwood. The story of the students in Fort Wayne, and in Gainesville too, are genuinely inspirational. I happen to be the parent of a teenager who proudly identifies as a member of the LGBTQ community, and it means so much to me to see others who care about their being representation on the stage. I am so damned happy that those young actors, my daughter, and thousands more young people across this country and around the world aren't afraid of a more inclusive future, of a more inclusive present, and are willing to stand up and help make it happen. There is a long association of LGBTQ content relating to Robin Hood adaptations in various forms. One in particular that I'll make as my reading recommendation for this episode is Nottingham by Anna Burke, another spin on the story in which Robin Hood is actually a woman. But, in this case, Maid Marian is a separate person, and the crux of the book is about their budding relationship. My listening recommendation is my piece on Little John's long-standing queer relationship with another member of the Merry Men. To find that and other bits of bonus audio, you'll need to go to patreon.com/intogreenwood and sign up at either the Merry Bandit or Notorious Outlaw tier. By doing so, you'd be doing a lot to help me be able to keep making this podcast and be able to keep it ad-free. If you're feeling uncertain about recurring financial support, but you're enjoying the podcast and would be willing to offer a bit of a tip, there is now an account at buymeacoffee.com/intogreenwood. 50% of all proceeds from the podcast raised during the month of June will be split between the charity established by the Carroll High School students and the Trevor Project, a nationwide nonprofit that has been working to prevent suicide amongst LGBTQ youth for 25 years. I will also include links to the websites for those organizations in the episode description if you'd like to give directly. If you're not able to help support the podcast financially, I understand entirely. Spreading the word about the show and writing some positive reviews on your favorite podcast service is entirely free and would be an immense help. If you'd like to get in touch, you can email intogreenwood@gmail.com. And while I've been on a bit of a social media break, the accounts are still active for Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all with the handle @IntoGreenwood. Into the Greenwood is also on Discord, in a server set up by friend of the show, Mike Nichols, where our merry band has discussions, shares artwork, organizes watch parties, and even has a Robin Hood-themed book club. If you'd like to join, just get in touch, and we'll get you an invitation. Into the Greenwood is produced and edited by me, Thaddeus Papke, and our theme music is by Plastic 3. That's all for now, though. So once again, I find myself wishing safe travels to you, one and all. Until our next journey together into the Greenwood.